Thank you, Eric, and thanks, Perry, for that summary. So it is my pleasure to introduce Carrie Hamlin, about whom we've heard multiple times already. Carrie Hamlin joined the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce in 2012, serving as the CEO and president and promoting the triple bottom line. The Green Chamber has worked with the American Sustainable Business Network and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce for several years. Carrie also serves as a state senator and sits on multiple committees relevant to our discussions here today. As chair of the Economic Development and Policy Committee, Carrie will share with us today the state's economic development plan and legislation during the upcoming session. So please welcome Senator Carrie Hamlin, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I do want to clarify, it's the U.S. Green Chamber. Our politics from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce are probably not necessarily right. So I do want to. No, it's quite all right. And also, I'm really grateful because the U.S. Green Chamber's executive director actually now lives in El Paso, which is about 45 minutes away from where I am. So thank you all so much. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm coming to you from the sacred land of the Tiwa and the Manso Indian tribes and the Mescalero and Chiricahua Apache tribes, and would always like to recognize that land. As Sandra said, yes, I am the CEO and president of the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce. And just to give you a little bit of background, the Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce formed in 2010, and it's really nice to see a bunch of names of folks that I know. One of my former board members is on here. My colleagues with the City Economic Development Department are on here, and many of you who have actually presented in the Economic Development and Policy Committee. It's nice to see you. You know who you are, so it's great to see you. The Las Cruces Green Chamber of Commerce started in 2010, and it was a response to our city going nuts because we got an Olive Garden. People were like, yay, we finally are a real city. And yet we had 3 locally owned Italian food restaurants who were like, what about us? And so there were a group of local business owners who were saying we need to elevate the presence of locally owned businesses and give them some advocacy. And also we'd be foolish not to acknowledge the impact of solar and renewable energy in our community. So that's why we were called the Green Chamber. And I had a 20-year career in radio, and I joined that in 2012, looking forward to a change, but also understanding that if I worked for a university, I would never be able to run for state senate because of the Hatch Act. And so this was really kind of a perfect opportunity because last year in 2020, I became the senator for District 38. I am the chair of the interim subcommittee of economic development and policy. I was also a member of the interim subcommittee of the Rural Economic Development Task Force. I'm a member of the Conservation Committee, and I believe starting Tuesday, it will be known that I am going to be the vice chair of Tax, Business, and Transportation. So I'm very excited about that, and it works out really well. Now, just a disclaimer, I am not connected to the Economic Development Department in any way, but what I'll be talking about are from presentations because, and also I get a wonderful opportunity to work with Johanna Nelson and Secretary Keyes when it comes down to outdoor recreation, when it comes down to local economic development, and really advocating for small businesses. And certainly, as my colleague in the House said, you know, there are so many folks, and Eric, you were part of this as well, of many people who were on that train who were trying to push all of this legislation over the finish line. And I look at, you know, we saw this last session, some monumental legislation passed that has been in the works for decades. And I look at, and a lot of times it died in the Senate, which was really, really sad. And so I look at the 7 freshmen, and if you'll ever take a chance to look at the vote difference, this is where elections matter and your vote matters, because much of the legislation passed by 6 or 7 votes, and there are 7 new senators in the Senate. So your votes do matter, and elections do matter. If I can, I'm going to pull up and share my screen, if that's all right, and just kind of give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'll move into the Economic Development Department target areas and then the statewide plan, which is going to be available, and I can post that in the chat when I'm done. the results and findings, and the legislation past and future. And so we'll talk about that as I move on. So as we go to the State Economic Development Department, their target areas, they have 9 target areas: aerospace, biosciences, cybersecurity, outdoor recreation, film and television, sustainable and value-added agriculture, intelligent manufacturing, global trade, and sustainable and green energy. And there are a couple of areas that are certainly in my wheelhouse, certainly outdoor recreation, sustainable and value-added agriculture because of my work with the Healthy Food Financing Initiative, and obviously sustainable and green energy. And the vision of the Economic Development Department is to have a diverse and robust economy that engages local talent, cultivates innovation, and delivers prosperity for all New Mexicans. And in early 2021, there was, really just this kind of markedly different approach from New Mexico's response, where the Economic Development Department really needed to develop a strategy. And I'm not one who likes to spend a whole lot of money on studies if we already know that information. But in this case, also because of COVID, our business environment and the forecast forward is different. And it's going to continue to be different. It's not going to be different on how you as an individual business operate at the core level, but how you connect out in the community is different. And that's where your success as a small business, as a green business, your ability to pivot and adapt will be critical in your success. And that's where we get to be able to talk about with the Las Cruces Green Chamber is how you can adapt. And so just kind of going over the plan, which was commissioned from the Center for Innovation Strategy and Policy. They talked about, and I'll put this, when I'm done talking, I'll be able to type in the web address so you can look these up. But they talk about empowering and collaboration. And stakeholders identified several challenges that impede the state's ability to capitalize on these opportunities. And so, some of these will not be any surprise to any of us. Lack of collaboration between economic developed stakeholders, misalignment between higher education and industry, difficulty attracting and retaining talent in urban, rural, and tribal communities, disengagement of socioeconomically disadvantaged communities in the planning process, public sector dominance in New Mexico's innovation ecosystem, and concentration of economy in a few key industries. So I think, when I was going through that, I was like, oh yeah, there's that. And then there's that. And oh yeah, that too. So I'm really grateful that the Economic Development Department had, really the vulnerability to say, we really need to take a close examination as to what we're doing, whether or not we're effective, and what we need to move forward. And there are 6 things that they decided to, in terms of moving forward. And it was, let's go through here. I've already got that. Is to modernize New Mexico's economic development ecosystem. And as we've talked about, Eric has talked about this, Representative Martinez has talked about this in terms of broadband. E-commerce for many brick and mortars is really, and also service providers. I know that there are some folks who are service providers rather than actually having product, is how can you connect with people in a time when people are not getting out? And we need to really push for more broadband, and we need to do it yesterday. And because we're all realizing, hey, wow, many of us have been talking about this for years. Thanks for joining the party. Also strengthen New Mexico's communities. And those were conversations that were had in the Rural Economic Task Force, was how we can bring and support and uplift the rural communities, because the urban communities, we have those connections, we have the opportunities for mixers, we have those abilities to have a pool to hire from, whereas in rural communities, that's not necessarily easy. Also reimagining education and training. We're working with our community college here, and we know that those are opportunities all over the state as to how to develop programs that are meeting the needs of employers today in New Mexico. And that's not the same as it was 30 years ago. Also promoting equity through economic justice. We've seen the changes of people, whether or not they want to work for crappy bosses or if they want to work for agencies that they believe in and that value them. Also enable high quality homegrown innovation. And many of us are going to be solopreneurs, going to be working from home, going to be creating those products. And we need to be able to continue to support that. And obviously diversify New Mexico's economy, which is stuff that we're talking about in the legislature when it comes down to like legalizing adult use cannabis and diversifying our revenue streams. And so with this, moving on, just because I know that we're pushing on time, is looking at legislation. And Eric, you also probably be able to chime in if I miss out, but just to look at 2021 in terms of some really big legislation that passed. Obviously, the Cannabis Regulation Act. It wasn't a perfect bill, but it was something that we needed to get done, because otherwise we are going to be behind the curve on so many things, and we're tired of New Mexico being last. And so there may be some legislation that is going to come up this year that is going to kind of tweak those things to make it a little bit easier for small businesses and producers to start. We'll see that. I won't know that until probably Monday or Tuesday. Also, the liquor delivery and license, that was 40 years of horrible legislation, because there were people who had business licenses that became worth $500,000 or $750,000. And if you were a small business, a small restaurant just starting up, you had to wait for those business licenses to become available. And that was just an unfair way of doing things. Also, the Sustainable Building Tax Credit, the Healthy Workplaces Act, the big deal, the Homemade Food Act for a lot of people who are producing things out of their homes. Those were things that were really important. You know, things that we're coming up on is the Paid Family and Medical Leave Task Force, the Agro-Tourism Insurance coverage, and also the Cigarette and Tobacco Products Tax. We're going to be looking at opportunities of still continuing to generate revenue. The GRT is going to be something that's going to be explored again, which for many of us who are sole proprietors, I am a consultant on the side, not a big fan of the GRT, but also understand its importance. And so this is where what I think is important for us as I wrap up, as a community, as a collective of all of us who are on here today, we have this really incredible opportunity to have an enormous impact, more than just in our own little ecosystem here. You know, at the state level, I feel that the Economic Development Department is a lot more receptive, a lot more approachable than they've ever been. And if you don't feel that, then come through me. Come through our legislators, which I feel that we are a lot more approachable than most folks. I was on a Zoom last night where that was something that was like, you know, you can actually talk to your legislator and try and get your opinions and your thoughts conveyed. So what our messages should be, and this is where SEED comes in, this is where all of us as advocates come in, is to make sustainable and equitable economic development a priority in our conversations, in our collaborations, and in our output. That's something that's already been here. Looking at the survey results, people care about that. But also, you know, it's one thing that we can talk about, but demonstrate what it means to operate as a sustainable and equitable business. One of our participants here, as part of my board members, we created the Sustainable Business Recognition Program so that we could help uplift those businesses that are doing things to help reduce their impact on the planet, decrease their overhead, reduce and reuse and recycle. And so if we can teach them how to become a sustainable and equitable business, then we can help spread that word. In some cases, some businesses are already doing it and they just need the recognition. And also provide a roadmap to help other businesses become sustainable and equitable. With our business recognition program, we have a series of newspaper articles to share and e-blasts to share with businesses about, hey, instead of using plastic cups, why don't you use ceramic cups? Because it uses a lot less water to wash those mugs than it does to make the plastic to make those cups that you're going to throw away in the landfill. And then lastly, share with policymakers and state departments and business leaders that sustainable and equitable businesses are the future of economic development in the state. There are businesses who are already doing this work. We need to help uplift them. We need to share their stories, which I think is something that could be a really great campaign out of this conference, is sharing your stories. And then as much as I hate Twitter, tagging all of us on Twitter, because that's where we get to share those stories. And so at this point, you know, I'd certainly open it up for questions if we have time, or if you want to move on to the next panelist. But that's how you can get in touch with me, is Carrie at locallascruces.com. And obviously my work phone number is there. The legislative session starts next Tuesday. Just a summary quickly is that our committee meetings will also be virtual and hybrid, where you'll be able to testify from the comforts of your own home. You won't have to spend any money on hotels or food or lodging or mileage or take off from work or from your business, which is always a big deal. And we will soon find out, I think today, what the situation will be of the 4 sessions. So I can certainly keep you posted, but you can contact me there at Carrie@locallascruces.com.